The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Kong Taiho stepped onto Station Helix 7 for the first time. The air smelled different here. It was clean, almost too clean, like it had been scrubbed of everything natural. He carried one bag over his shoulder. Inside it were clothes, a small photograph of his family, and nothing else. He did not need much. He never had. The station was enormous. Taiho had seen pictures during his training on Earth, but pictures could not capture the true size of it. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top. Artificial sunlight poured down from panels that mimicked a yellow star. Thousands of beings walked through the main corridor, and not one of them was human. Taiho had prepared himself for this. He knew he would be the only one of his kind here. Earth had fought hard for this chance. After decades of proving themselves to the Galactic Concord, humanity had finally earned the right to send one cadet to the military academy. Just one, and that cadet was him. He walked through the crowd, and the crowd noticed him. A group of tall four-armed Kalani stopped their conversation to stare. Their gray skin and black eyes followed him as he passed. A pair of Sorvathi, their scales green and shining, whispered something to each other and laughed. Taiho did not understand their language, but he understood the meaning. They were laughing at him. He kept walking. The registration hall was at the end of the corridor. A bored-looking official sat behind a floating desk. The official was a Vori, a species covered in soft feathers the color of sunset. She looked up at Taiho with eyes that held no warmth. "Name and species," she said. "Kang Taiho, human." The Avori paused. Her feathers shifted slightly. "Human," she repeated, as if tasting a strange food. "You are the one from Earth." "Yes." She typed something into her console. "You have been assigned to Training Group 7. Instructor Vorn will be your commanding officer. Your quarters are in Block D, Room 1147. Do you have questions?" Taiho had many questions, but he knew better than to ask them here. "No," he said. "Then move along. Others are waiting." Taiho took his information card and left. Behind him, he heard the Avori mutter something to her colleague. He caught one word: primitive. His quarters were small. There was a bed, a desk, a chair, and a window that looked out into the stars. Taiho set his bag on the bed and stood at the window for a long time. Somewhere out there, far beyond his sight, was Earth. His mother and father were there. His younger sister was there. They had cried when he left. His mother had held his face in her hands and told him to be careful. His father had said nothing, but his eyes had said everything. Taiho touched the glass. It was cold. He wondered if he would ever see them again. The next morning, he reported to Training Group 7. The training hall was a wide space filled with equipment he did not recognize. Floating targets drifted near the ceiling. Weapon racks lined the walls, holding devices that hummed with energy. Other cadets stood in small groups, talking among themselves. When Taiho entered, they all stopped. Instructor Vorn stood at the front of the room. He was Kalani, but larger than any Kalani Taiho had seen. His 6 limbs were thick with muscle, and scars covered his gray skin like a map of old battles. His eyes, solid black and without whites, fixed on Taiho with the coldness of deep space. "You are the human," Vorn said. It was not a question. "Yes, Instructor." Vorn made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I have read your file. Your species discovered faster than light travel only 40 years ago. Before that, you were killing each other with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. You are here because your government begged for this opportunity, not because you earned it." Taiho said nothing. There was nothing to say. "You will train with Group 7, Vorn continued. "This is the lowest group. If you cannot keep pace, you will be removed. I do not expect you to last 1 month." The other cadets watched. Some smiled. Others simply stared with curiosity, like scientists observing a strange animal. Taiho felt their eyes on him, measuring him, dismissing him. "Find a place and stand there," Vorn ordered. "Training begins now." Taiho found a place at the back of the room. The cadet next to him was Sorvathi, with bright red scales and a long tail. The Sorvathy looked at Taiho with open disgust. "Do not stand near me," the Sorvathy said. "I do not want your smell on my scales." Taiho moved 2 steps to the left. He did not argue. He did not react. He simply observed. The training session was brutal. Vorn pushed them through combat drills, endurance tests, and weapons handling. The other cadets moved with strength and speed that Taiho could not match. The Kalani cadets lifted weights that would crush a human. The Sorvathy moved so fast they blurred. Even the smallest cadets, a species Taiho did not recognize, performed feats that seemed impossible. Taiho struggled. His muscles burned. His lungs screamed for air, but he did not stop. He finished every drill, even if he finished last. He completed every test, even if his scores were the lowest. And through it all, he watched. He watched how the Kalani relied on their strength but ignored their surroundings. He watched how the Sorvathy were fast but predictable in their patterns. He watched how Instructor Vorn favored certain weapons and dismissed others. He took notes in his mind, building a picture of this new world. That evening, Taiho sat alone in the dining hall. The food was strange, but he ate it without complaint. Other cadets filled the tables around him, but no one sat with him. No one even looked at him. Then someone did. A human woman approached his table. She wore the uniform of station engineering, not military training. Her name tag read Yoon Hana. She was perhaps a few years older than Taiho, with tired eyes and a kind face. "You are the new cadet," she said. "May I sit?" Taiho nodded. Hannah sat across from him and set down her own tray. "I work in the engineering bay," she said. "I have been on this station for 3 years. You are the first human cadet I have seen, or have been others?" Hannah's expression darkened. 3 before you. None of them passed the first examination. Instructor Vorn made sure of that. Taiho absorbed this information. He does not want humans here. No, he does not. Hannah leaned closer. "The weapons proficiency exam is in 2 weeks. It will determine your future at this academy. Vorn has failed every human who has taken it. He will try to fail you too. Then I will have to make sure he cannot." Hannah studied him for a long moment. Something changed in her eyes. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps it was simply surprise that he had not given up already. "I like you, Kung Taiho," she said. "You are quiet. But I think there is fire behind those quiet eyes." "Right." Taiho returned to his food. "We will see." Outside the window of the dining hall, the stars burned in the endless dark. Taiho looked at them and thought of home. He thought of his family. He thought of everyone who had ever told him that humans were not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough. He would prove them wrong. All of them. He just needed to survive long enough to do it. 2 weeks passed like water through open fingers. Taiho trained every day until his body ached. He woke before the artificial sunrise and went to sleep long after the lights dimmed. He ran when others rested. He practiced when others celebrated. And still remained at the bottom of his training group, but he was learning. He learned that the Kelani feared nothing except shame. Their culture was built on honor, and failure was worse than death to them. He learned that the Sorvathy were proud of their speed, so proud that they often moved before thinking. He learned that the Avori, with their hollow bones and light bodies, relied on precision because they could not afford to take damage. Most importantly, he learned about Instructor Vorn. Was old even by Kalani standards. He had fought in 3 galactic wars. He had killed enemies with his bare hands and commanded fleets of warships. He believed that strength was the only truth in the universe, and he believed that humans had none of it. To Vorn, humanity was a mistake that the galaxy would eventually correct. Taiho watched Vorn carefully. He noticed that Vorn always stood on the left side of the training hall, where he could see all the exits. He noticed that Vorn favored plasma weapons and looked down on anything he considered primitive. He noticed that Vorn tested cadets not just on skill, but on spirit. Those who gave up icily were dismissed. Those who fought until the end, even in failure, earned a small measure of his respect. Taiho did not give up. Ever. The day before the weapons proficiency exam, Vorn gathered all the cadets in the main hall. His black eyes swept across the group, stopping briefly on Taiho before moving on. "Tomorrow, you will face the examination," Vorn announced. "Each of you will enter the combat arena alone. You will choose a weapon from the armory. You will face 9 combat drones. These drones are programmed to kill. They will not show mercy. Neither should you." A murmur ran through the cadets. 9 drones was a high number. Usually, the examination used only 5 or 6. "If you destroy all 9 drones, you pass," Vorn continued. "If you are disabled before completing this task, you fail. Failure means expulsion from this academy. There are no second chances." Taiho felt the weight of those words. No second chances. If he failed tomorrow, he would be sent back to Earth in shame. Every human who came after him would carry the burden of his failure. He could not let that happen. That night, Taiho could not sleep. He lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling, running through scenarios in his mind. He thought about which weapon to choose. He had trained with several during the past 2 weeks. The plasma rifle was powerful but heavy. The energy blade required close combat, which was dangerous against multiple enemies. The sonic disruptor was effective, but slow to recharge. He finally decided on the pulse bow. It was an advanced version of an ancient weapon design, firing bolts of compressed energy with high accuracy. Many aliens considered it outdated, but Taiho had practiced with it secretly. It felt natural in his hands, like something his ancestors might have used. Morning came too quickly. Taiho dressed in his combat uniform and walked to the armory. The corridor was busy with other cadets, all of them moving toward the same destination. Some looked nervous. Others looked confident. None of them spoke to Taiho. He reached the armory door and stopped. The door was locked. Taiho checked his access card. It should have worked. All cadets were given temporary access to the armory on examination day. He tried again. The panel flashed red. Having trouble? Taiho turned. Cadet Reska stood behind him. The Sorvathi's red scales seemed to glow under the corridor lights, and his thin lips were curved into a cruel smile. Reska had tormented Taiho from the first day. He was the one who had told him not to stand too close. He was the one who had laughed the loudest when Taiho struggled. "The door will not open," Taiho said. "How unfortunate." Reska did not sound surprised. "Perhaps your primitive human technology is not compatible with our systems." Taiho understood immediately. Reska had done something to the access codes. He had locked Taiho out on purpose. "You changed the codes," Taiho said quietly. Reska's smile widened. "Prove it." He walked past Taiho and pressed his own card to the panel. The door opened without hesitation. Reska stepped inside, selected his weapons, and walked out again. He did not look back. Other cadets arrived. Their cards worked without problem. They entered, chose their weapons, and left. No one offered to help Taiho. No one even asked what was wrong. Taiho went to find Instructor Vorn. He found Vorn in the observation deck, preparing for the examination. Taiho explained the situation clearly and calmly. He told Vorn that his access had been blocked. He told him that he suspected sabotage. Vorn listened without expression. When Taiho finished, the instructor was silent for a long moment. "You are accusing a fellow cadet of cheating," Vorn said finally. "Do you have evidence?" "No, instructor, but I request that you check the access logs. They will show when the codes were changed and by whom." Vorn made a sound of annoyance. "I do not have time for human excuses. The examination begins in 1 hour. If you cannot access the armory, that is your problem, not mine. Instructor, I cannot complete the examination without a weapon. Then forfeit." Vorn turned away. "Or enter the arena empty-handed. Either way, I expect you to fail. Humans always fail." Taiho stood very still. His hands did not shake. His voice did not waver. But inside, something cold and hard was forming in his chest. "I will not forfeit," he said. Vorn paused. He turned back, and for the first time, there was something other than contempt in his eyes. It might have been surprise. It might have been curiosity. "Then you will die," Vorn said. "The drones do not care if you are armed or not. I understand. Vorn stared at him for a long moment, then shrugged. It is your choice, human. Report to the waiting area. Your turn will come. Taiho bowed slightly and left. His mind was already racing. He had 1 hour. He had no weapon. He had no access to the armory, but he had his hands. He had his eyes. And he had something that no alien on this station understood. He had 10,000 years of human survival instinct. The waiting area was a large room filled with desks and chairs. Cadets sat in small groups, checking their weapons and talking nervously. Taiho entered and sat alone at a desk in the corner. He looked at the desk. It was made of metal alloy, strong but bendable under enough pressure. The legs were attached with simple bolts. He looked at the chair. The back was curved polymer, flexible but sharp if broken correctly. The seat was connected to the base with cables that carried power to the heating element. He looked at the walls. Power conduits ran along the edges, covered by thin panels. Slowly, quietly, Taiho began to work. No one noticed. No one cared what the human was doing in the corner. They were too busy preparing for their own tests by the time his name was called. Taiho had what he needed. He stood up, held his creation close to his body, and walked toward the arena door. Behind him, Reska was laughing. Look, the human has no weapon. This will be entertaining. Taiho did not look back. He stepped through the door, and it closed behind him with a sound like a final heartbeat. The arena waited in darkness, and somewhere in that darkness, 9 drones powered on. The arena was larger than Taiho had expected. It stretched before him like an artificial canyon filled with metal walls, raised platforms, and deep shadows. The ceiling was lost in darkness high above. Emergency lights glowed red along the floor, casting everything in the color of blood. Taiho stood at the entrance and let his eyes adjust. He breathed slowly in and out, calming his racing heart. In his hands, he held his creation. It was not pretty. It was not elegant. But it would work. He had taken a metal leg from one of the waiting room desks. It was thin but strong, about the length of his arm from shoulder to fingertip. He had bent it slowly, carefully, using the edge of another desk as leverage, till it curved like the ancient bows of his ancestors. The curve was not perfect, but it held tension. For the string, he had stripped a power cable from beneath a wall panel. The outer coating was tough polymer. The inner wires were thin metal strands that he had braided together. When stretched between the two ends of the bent metal, it hummed with potential energy. His arrows were simpler. He had broken the polymer back of a chair into sharp fragments, each about the length of his hand. They were not balanced. They would not fly true over long distances. But they were sharp, and they were deadly. Up in the observation deck, the other cadets watched through thick glass. Instructor Vorn stood at the center, his arms crossed over his massive chest. Beside him, the examination officials monitored their screens and prepared their evaluations. The human enters without a weapon, one official noted. Should we delay the examination? No, Vorn said. He chose to proceed. Let him face the consequences. He carries something, another official observed. What is that in his hands? No one answered. No one knew. In the arena, Taiho moved forward. He kept low, using the metal walls as cover. His bare feet made no sound on the cold floor. He had removed his boots in the waiting area. They were too loud, too clumsy. His ancestors had hunted barefoot for thousands of years. He would do the same. A sound reached his ears. It was a low hum, like a machine waking from sleep. Then another, and another. 9 separate sounds, coming from 9 separate directions. The drones were activating. Taiho pressed himself against a wall and listened. The drones were spreading out, searching for him. They would use heat sensors, motion detectors, and sound amplifiers. They were designed to hunt and kill. They were designed to be perfect, but Taiho was not trying to be perfect. He was trying to survive. He moved again, slipping between walls like a shadow. He found a raised platform and climbed it silently. From this position, he could see more of the arena. He could see the drones. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Each drone was a sphere of black metal, about the size of a human head. They floated in the air on invisible fields of energy. Red lights glowed where their sensors were located. Small weapons ports dotted their surfaces, ready to fire plasma bolts at any target. Tai-Ho counted them. 9, just as Vorn had promised. They were moving in a search pattern, covering the arena systematically. He notched an arrow to his bowstring. The polymer shard felt awkward against the braided wire. He had no finger guard, and he knew the string would cut his fingers when he released. He did not care. He drew the bow. The bent metal groaned softly under the pressure. He aimed at the nearest drone, calculated the distance and the drop, and released. The arrow flew. It was not straight. It curved slightly to the left and dropped faster than he expected. But it was fast, and it was sharp. And the drone never saw it coming. The polymer shard punched through the drone's sensor. Cluster with a sound like breaking glass. Red lights flickered and died. The drone wobbled in the air, its systems failing, and crashed to the ground with a heavy thud. In the observation deck, there was complete silence. Cadet Lyra, an Avori with feathers the color of pale gold, leaned forward in her seat. Her eyes were wide. Did he just... He built a weapon, someone whispered. From furniture, even Reska had stopped laughing. The Sorvathi stared at the viewing screen with his mouth half open, unable to process what he was seeing. Instructor Vorn said nothing, but his black eyes were fixed on the arena with an intensity that had not been there before. Tai-Ho did not celebrate. He was already moving. The sound of the crashing drone had alerted the others. They were coming. He dropped from the platform and ran. 2 drones appeared around a corner, their weapons ports glowing with charging plasma. Tai-Ho threw himself to the side as bolts of superheated energy burned through the air where he had been standing. He rolled, came up on one knee, and fired. The first arrow took a drone in its central body. The drone did not fall, but it spun wildly, its targeting systems disrupted. The second arrow missed completely, shattering against a metal wall. Tai-Ho cursed under his breath and ran again. He only had 7 arrows left. He could not afford to miss. The damaged drone regained control and pursued him. Tai-Ho ducked into a narrow passage between 2 walls. The passage was too small for the drones to follow. They hovered at the entrance, searching for another way around. Tai-Ho used this moment to think. He was faster than the drones in tight spaces, but they were faster in open areas. He could not outrun them in a straight chase. He needed to be clever. He looked at his arrows. 7 left. 8 drones remaining. He needed every shot to count. An idea formed in his mind. It was dangerous. It was possibly stupid, but it might work. He tore a strip of fabric from his uniform and wrapped it around one of his arrows. Then he searched the passage until he found what he was looking for, a vent that leaked hot air. From the station's heating system, he held the fabric-wrapped arrow near the vent. The heat was intense, almost burning. After a few seconds, the fabric began to smolder. Thin smoke rose from it. Tai-Ho smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had found his prey's weakness. He stepped out of the passage. 3 drones immediately turned toward him, their weapons charging. Tai-Ho ran toward them. The drones fired. Plasma bolts screamed through the air. Tai-Ho dodged left, then right, moving in patterns that no machine could predict because they were not patterns at all. They were instinct. They were 10,000 years of evolution screaming at him to survive. He reached a position behind a low wall and threw the smoldering arrow into the air. It spun, trailing smoke, and landed in a far corner of the arena. The drone's sensors locked onto the heat signature. 2 of them immediately changed course, racing toward the false target. Tai-Ho stepped out from cover and fired. 2 arrows, 2 drones. The first drone fell. The second took the arrow in its side and crashed into a wall, disabled but not destroyed. 5 drones left. 5 arrows left. In the observation deck, Cadet Lyra had stood up from her seat. Her feathers were raised in excitement. "He is hunting them," she said softly. "He is actually hunting them." Instructor Vorn finally spoke. His voice was low, almost a growl. Yes, he said. He is. Down in the arena, Taiho retrieved one of his arrows from a fallen drone. The polymer was cracked, but still usable. 6 arrows now. 5 drones left. The hunt continued. The arena had become a battlefield of shadows and steel. Smoke drifted through the air from damaged drones and scorched walls. The red emergency lights flickered as the station's systems struggled to keep up with the chaos. Taiho crouched behind a fallen platform, his chest heaving. Sweat ran down his face and stung his eyes. His hands were bleeding. The bowstring had cut deep into his fingers every time he released an arrow. And now the braided wire was slick with his own blood. He did not care. He could not care. 5 drones still hunted him, and he had only 6 arrows left. 2 of the drones had changed their pattern. They were working together now, moving in coordinated sweeps that left no blind spots. The Academy's programming had adapted. The machines were learning from his tactics, but Taiho was learning too. He studied the drones' movements. They always kept a certain distance from each other, close enough to provide covering fire, but far enough to avoid both being hit by a single attack. Their sensors swept in overlapping arcs, creating a net of detection that was almost impossible to slip through. Almost Taiho noticed a gap. It appeared for only half a second when both drones turned at the edge of their sweep patterns. A half-second window. It was not much, but it was enough. He waited. The drones approached, their humming growing louder. Taiho controlled his breathing. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat, in his temples, in his bleeding fingers. He forced himself to be still. The gap appeared. Taiho burst from cover. He sprinted across open ground, his bare feet slapping against the metal floor. The drones detected him immediately. Weapons charged. Plasma bolts flew, but Taiho was not running away. He was running toward. He slid under a low barrier, came up in a roll, and fired 2 arrows in quick succession. The first arrow struck a drone's weapon port just as it discharged, causing the plasma bolt to explode inside the machine. The drone burst apart in a shower of sparks and burning metal. The second arrow flew true into the other drone's sensor cluster. It crashed to the ground, dead. 3 drones left. 4 arrows remaining in the observation deck. The atmosphere had changed completely. Cadets who had been whispering and laughing were now silent, their eyes locked on the screens. Some had stood up from their seats. Others gripped the edges of their chairs with white-knuckled intensity. Even the examination officials had stopped taking notes. They simply watched, unable to look away. Instructor Vorn stood like a statue, his expression unreadable. But there was something different in his posture. The contempt that had lived in his body language since Taiho arrived was fading. In its place was something else. Something that might have been respect. Reska sat in the back row, his scales pale with shock. He had expected the human to die within minutes. He had expected to laugh as the drones tore him apart. Instead, he was watching something impossible. This cannot be happening, Reska muttered. He has no real weapon. He has no training. He is just a human. No one answered him. No one was listening. Down in the arena, Taiho was hurting. His body screamed for rest. Every muscle ached. His lungs burned with each breath. Blood dripped from his fingers and left. Dark spots on the floor, but he kept moving. The 3 remaining drones had regrouped near the center of the arena. They hovered in a tight formation, their sensors scanning in all directions. They had learned not to separate. They had learned that the human was dangerous alone. Taiho observed them from behind a stack of debris. He had 4 arrows left. 3 drones. Even if he hit every shot, he would have only 1 arrow to spare. There was no room for mistakes. He needed a new plan. His eyes moved around the arena, taking in every detail. Fallen drones. Scattered debris. Scorch marks from plasma fire. And there, in the corner, something useful. A drone he had disabled earlier. It had crashed into a wall but was not completely destroyed. Its internal power cell was still intact. Taiho remembered his training on Earth. Power cells stored enormous amounts of energy. If that energy was released all at once, He moved through the shadows, circling around the arena. The three drones tracked his last known position, waiting for him to appear. They did not see him slip behind their formation. They did not see him reach the damaged drone. Taiho examined the power cell. It was still connected to the drone's body by thick cables. He could not remove it without tools. But he did not need to remove it. He pulled one of his arrows from his makeshift quiver and began to work. Using the sharp edge of the polymer, he cut into the cable insulation. Sparks flew. The power cell hummed dangerously. Taiho positioned the damaged drone carefully. Then he retreated to a safe distance and prepared his bow. He had one chance at this. "Come on," he whispered to himself. "Come find me." He stepped into the open and shouted. His voice echoed through the arena like thunder. The three drones spun toward him. Their weapons charged, Taiho ran. He ran directly toward the damaged drone. The three active drones following close behind. Plasma bolts seared the air around him. One grazed his shoulder, burning through his uniform and scorching his skin. He screamed but did not stop. At the last moment, he dove to the side. The three drones flew over the damaged drone at full speed. Taiho twisted in midair, drew his bow, and fired. His arrow struck the exposed power cell. The explosion was blinding. Pure white energy erupted from the damaged drone, washing over the three active drones like a wave. Their systems overloaded. Their armor cracked. All three crashed to the ground in a tangle of sparking metal and broken circuitry. The arena fell silent. Taiho lay on his back, staring at the dark ceiling. His ears rang from the explosion. His shoulder throbbed with pain. His entire body felt like it had been beaten with hammers. But he was alive. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself to his feet. He looked around the arena. 9 drones. All destroyed. Some by arrows. Some by improvisation. All by him. In the observation deck, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Cadet Lyra began to clap. The sound was small at first, just her feathered hands striking together in the silence. But then another cadet joined her, and another. And soon, the entire observation deck was filled with applause. Taiho did not hear it. He was too tired to hear anything except the pounding of his own heart. Instructor Vorn turned away from the window. His face was still impossible to read. But when he spoke, his voice was different. Softer. Almost human. "Prepare the medical team," he said to an official. "The human needs treatment, and his score Instructor." The official asked, "Did he pass?" Vorn was silent for a long moment. Then, for the first time since Taiho had arrived on Station Hillock 7, he smiled. "He passed," Vorn said. "I've never seen anything like that in 40 years of training cadets." He did not just pass. He rewrote everything I thought I knew about humans. Down in the arena, Taiho finally collapsed, but there was a smile on his face as the darkness took him. He had done it. Against all odds, against all expectations, against an entire galaxy that said he could not. He had done it, and this was only the beginning. Taiho woke in the medical bay. White lights hung above him like artificial moons. The air smelled of medicine and clean metal. He tried to move, but his body refused to cooperate. A gentle hand pressed against his shoulder. "Do not move," a voice said. "You are injured." He turned his head slowly. Yunhana sat beside his bed, her tired eyes now bright with something that looked like pride. Behind her, a medical drone hovered, monitoring his vital signs. "How long was I unconscious?" Taiho asked. His voice was rough, like sandpaper. 16 hours. You had burns on your shoulder, deep cuts on your hands, and 3 cracked ribs. The doctor said you should have stopped fighting long before the end. I could not stop. Hannah smiled. "No, I suppose you could not." She handed him a cup of water. He drank slowly, feeling the cold liquid travel down his dry throat. His hands were wrapped in white bandages. He could barely grip the cup. "What happened after I collapsed?" he asked. Hannah's smile grew wider. "Chaos. That is what happened. The entire station is talking about you. A human cadet who built a weapon from desks and chairs and destroyed 9 combat drones. The story has already spread to other stations. By tomorrow, it will reach Earth. Taiho closed his eyes. He thought of his parents, his sister. They would hear about this. They would know that he had not failed. What about Reska? He asked. The armory sabotage? Hannah's expression darkened. The access logs were examined. They showed that Reska changed the codes the night before the examination. He has been removed from the academy and sent home in disgrace. His family is furious. Good. There is more. Hannah leaned closer. Instructor Vorn wants to see you. As soon as you are able to walk, you are to report to the examination board. A chill ran through Taiho's body. The examination board was where cadets received their final judgments. It was where careers were made or destroyed. It was where Vorn had failed every human before him. Am I being expelled? Taiho asked quietly. Hannah laughed. It was a warm sound, full of genuine joy. Expelled? Taiho, you passed the examination. You are not going anywhere. Then why does Vorn want to see me? I do not know. But I think it is not for punishment. She stood up and smoothed her uniform. Rest for now. I will come back to help you to the boardroom. Taiho rested. But his mind would not be still. 3 hours later, he walked into the examination boardroom. His steps were slow and careful. His ribs ached with every movement. But he walked on his own feet, without help, because that was what humans did. The room was large and circular. High seats rose in tiers around a central platform where the accused or examined would stand. Today, those seats were filled. Every instructor at the academy was present. Every official, even some cadets, had been allowed to watch from the upper galleries. Instructor Vorn stood at the center platform waiting. His 6 limbs were folded behind his back, and his black eyes followed Taiho as he approached. Cadet Kong Taiho, Vorn said. His voice echoed through the room. You stand before this board to receive judgment on your performance in the weapons proficiency examination. Taiho stood straight, ignoring the pain in his ribs. I am ready, Instructor. Akorn nodded slowly. Before I deliver the judgment, I have one question for you. Yes, Instructor. Vorn's eyes narrowed. When you learned that the armory was locked against you, why did you not surrender? You had no weapon. You had no chance. Any reasonable being would have accepted defeat, but you did not. Why? The room was silent. Everyone waited for his answer. Taiho thought about it. He thought about Earth. He thought about his ancestors, who had survived ice ages with nothing but stone tools. He thought about the first humans who had crossed vast oceans on wooden ships, not knowing what waited on the other side. He thought about the scientists and engineers who had sent people to the moon using computers weaker than a child's toy. Because surrender is not in our nature, Taiho said finally. On Earth, we learned long ago that the universe does not care about fairness. It does not give us what we deserve. It only gives us what we can take. Our ancestors faced ice ages without fur. They faced predators without claws. They faced deserts without camels and oceans without gills. And they survived. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but because they refused to stop. He paused, gathering his thoughts. When I saw that the armory was locked, I did not think about giving up. I thought about what I could use. I saw desks and chairs. I saw cables and metal. I saw materials. And I built what I needed. That is what humans do. We adapt. We improvise. We find a way. Always. The room remained silent. Taiho could feel hundreds of eyes on him, measuring him, judging him. Then Instructor Vorn did something unexpected. He bowed. It was not a deep bow. It was not a bow of submission. It was a bow of respect, one warrior to another. I have trained cadets for 40 years, Vorn said, his voice softer than before. I have seen Kalani warriors crush their enemies with raw power. I have seen Sorvathi assassins move faster than thought. I have seen Avori snipers hit targets from impossible distances. But I have never seen what I saw yesterday. Straightened and looked directly at Taiho. I thought humans were weak. I thought you were primitives who had stumbled into space by accident. I was wrong. You are not weak. You are something far more dangerous. You are survivors. You are adapters. You are the species that looks at an impossible situation and says, I will find a way. He turned to address the entire room. This cadet entered the arena with no weapon. He faced 9 combat drones designed to counter energy weapons, plasma rifles, and sonic disruptors. And he defeated them all with a bow made from furniture and arrows made from broken chairs. He did not just pass the examination. He passed a test that this academy had forgotten existed. The test of the human spirit. Vorn turned back to Taiho. Cadet Kong Taiho, I hereby declare you not only passed but exceptional. You will be transferred to Training Group 1, effective immediately. And I will personally ensure that no one in this academy forgets what you have shown us today. The room erupted in applause. Cadets in the galleries stood and cheered. Even the instructors joined in, their hands or claws or tentacles coming together in recognition. In the upper gallery, Cadet Lyra watched with shining eyes. Beside her, other cadets whispered to each other, pointing at Taiho with newfound respect. Later that evening, a recording of the examination was released to the Galactic Concord's public network. It showed everything. The locked armory, the improvised weapon, the hunt, the explosion, the victory within hours. It had been viewed billions of times. Species across the galaxy watched in disbelief as a lone human, armed with nothing but determination and creativity. Dismantled machines built to withstand starship weapons. On Earth, Taiho's family watched the recording together. His mother cried. His father stood silent, his hand over his heart. His sister cheered so loudly that the neighbors came to investigate. And across the 12 star systems of the Galactic Concord, a new understanding began to take root. Humans were not dangerous because of their technology. Their ships were not the fastest. Their weapons were not the strongest. Their bodies were not the toughest. Humans were dangerous because they would never, ever stop finding a way, and the galaxy would never forget it.